just want to welcome everyone and do the briefest of introductions of our Chancellor, who is well known. For 12 years, he's led the university. And during that time, the university has soared. We have started new programs like the Journalism School. There's a new school for public health that has emerged under his leadership. Certainly, many know of the Honors College. And soon, we hope, a School of Pharmacy, possibly right here at York College. Value has been restored to the CUNY degree. And indeed, private funding has also soared to provide the additional support that is needed to our engaged, smart, and driven students so that they can achieve at the very highest. The Chancellor is doing a round of conversations with all of the colleges, and today is York's Day. We welcome you, Chancellor Goldtsein.
Thank you, President Keyes. It's always wonderful for me to be at York. I mean this in the deepest and most sincere ways. I've watched this institution evolve for the past 10, 11 years, and it really continues to do the kind of work that I think will have, and I don't mean to be elliptical in my language, I think really transforming the lives of students, both their professional and their personal goals. So I thank all of you for participating in this wonderful effort to make this institution the kind of institution that all of us will be proud of. And for me, that means students succeeding, students wanting to come here, and a place, an attractor for the students who will really make contributions in significant ways to society. And that's really what we're about, whether they are here for skills acquisition to get a job, whether they're here because they are curious about the world and really want to make their lives more productive by being good citizens, whether they're going to be the great scientists of our future, and certainly for me, scientific literacy and mathematical literacy is a sine qua non for a healthy and vibrant country. You know, I have used a metaphor, which I believe deeply in, that unless the United States really gets its arms around educating students at the level we really need to do that, we face a true national security problem in this country. And I don't mean to be elliptical about that. That statement has, for me, real meaning. I don't mean that we're going to be invaded or that our country is going to be placed in harm's way militarily, but it will be placed in harm's way because our quality of life will be diminished unless we can provide larger numbers of people to be educated in ways that will enable this country to be the competitive force that it has been for quite some time. I have traveled, and I'm sure many of you have traveled, throughout Asia and East Asia, throughout Eastern Europe, various continents, Latin America, and I have seen the investments that are being made in higher education across this world. And unfortunately, here in the United States, we're seeing a regression away from the support, especially of public higher education. And in early November, I invited 28 of the top CEOs in public higher education across the United States. This was the second time, excuse me, that I had done this, where we had the top chancellors or presidents of the major institutions, public institutions in the United States. And in this last meeting, We had the head of the University of California system, the head of the Oregon system, the head of the Wisconsin system, Georgia, Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Connecticut, New York, Florida. I mean, we had the very, very best people in the United States for a two-day conversation about the future of public higher education in the United States. And there was one commonality that coursed through that discussion, and that is, what are we going to do if there is a continuing degradation of support for public higher education in the United States? How are we going to be able to maintain our mission, and how are we going to be able to give the vibrant kinds of experiences that students need to really catapult themselves into an unforgiving economy for people that are not educated appropriately? The one view was that we have to reimagine how public universities are supported. The model that existed in this country, especially post-World War II, is a tired model that unfortunately is no longer viable as it was then, in part because there is more demand, as there should be, for seats at our public universities. You know that over 80% of the students that study in the United States at higher education institutions study at a public university. And if we don't get it right, and if we don't have the resources to train those students appropriately, we are headed into serious headwinds, and we really have to do something about it. So that summit really was yet another wake-up call for members of state and local government and the federal government to understand the importance of public higher education. That has been my constant focus over the past few years. There was a lot of work we had to do at CUNY. People needed to believe in the institution again. We had to start reshaping how our revenue became available and how to adequately get that revenue to the campuses so that we can hire the wonderful faculties that we're seeing hired here at your college over the past few years, and attract the students and keep those students engaged and have the kinds of instrumentation and equipment and technology and libraries, all of the very fundamental core things that you need to support the faculties as they do their very good work. We have problems in this state. I mean, I don't need to tell all of you that New York State's balance sheet is weak. New York City is coming out of the doldrums much faster than New York State for obvious reasons, and I don't need to reinforce that with this group. But we're facing some deep cuts. We'll be able to manage those cuts in part because not only am I, an academician by training in mathematics and in allied fields associated with mathematics, but I've also spent a fair amount of time in the financial services world, more as a consultant and as a members of board, and I had my ear pretty close to the ground early on in 2007 and started to tell our presidents, and Marcia Keyes was in the room when I was talking about this, that we were going into some serious waters here where some bad behavior was really being identified, really permissiveness in the way in which certain of the financial services industries were conducting their businesses, and that as a result of that, it's going to have a chilling effect. And that was somewhat of a prophetic statement at the time, I had no sense that what I was saying was really going to be as profound as it turned out to be. So the results are that New York has some really serious structural problems, and we're not alone, obviously. Just about most of the states in the Union are having similar problems, and it's going to take us a while to work out these problems because structural changes are going to have to be made. As a result of that, we have to, as a result of those early indications, we started to build up our reserves, which I insisted upon. We started to form working groups to really look at our physical assets and how those physical assets could be monetized and derive revenue from those physical assets to reshape them to go into the campuses to help bolster some of the deficiencies that we were starting to experience, and a whole bunch of different ways of business practices. And as a result of that, and I think confidence that people have in CUNY, we've been able to weather some really serious punches. But as we go forward, you cannot continue to take assets out of a system like this and diminish the operating support of a system like this without a commensurate flow of revenue. And I have been a very strong proponent. I've spoken to this governor, and I've spoken to the past two governors and the mayors during my tenure as chancellor, to talk about a rational basis for supporting both SUNY and CUNY. And people are starting to listen. And some of you know about this idea of the CUNY Compact, which is a totally different way of looking at financing investment. And at the core of that investment strategy is a rational tuition policy. We have a helter-skelter way of enacting tuition increases, which I think disadvantages people when they can least afford tuition increases. I never have viewed tuition as a tax. I view it as an investment, and I am not fearful, nor am I skittish about proposing tuition increases as long as our needy students are protected. I would never propose a change in a tax, in any kind of tax system. And some people view tuition as a tax. I don't, but I'll use that word just to be consistent with some of the rhetoric. I have never viewed being timid about charging additional tuition, provided we can have our financial aid systems, in particular TAP, the Tuition Assistance Program, and the Pell system, that is positively correlated or indexed, if you will, to changes in tuition. As long as the most needy students are not compromised by their ability to maintain their matriculation, I think the investment is probably the best investment that students can make, because at the end of the day, without that investment, there's going to be less and less full-time faculty, there's going to be less academic support services, and less things that faculties and students need in order to advance their goals. So we have some challenges that we are facing. None of you should be worried about that. That's what I would like to see is our faculties and our support people do the work that they do best. Let us beleaguered administrators do the fights in Albany and in City Hall, we will prevail. There's not going to be huge trauma, even though I must tell you that we've taken about $310 million out of the operating budgets of just our senior colleges alone in the past 2.5 years. That's about a 14% reduction. Obviously we can't continue to sustain it, but had we not made the moves we did 3 years ago in preparation for these stormy shoals that we're now finding ourselves, we would be in much more challenged situation than we are. So I want to spend most of my time responding to questions, but let me just say that York College, and I prepare for these visits pretty carefully. I have too many people giving me pieces of paper, make sure you know this, make sure you say this. And invariably, I don't read all of this stuff, but I have it here anyway. But I did read this, and it's quite impressive when you see what has happened here at York College under the leadership of Marcia Keyes, who I think is an extraordinary individual, a woman of great character and value. We're happy to have her. And I've gotten to know a number of the faculty here because I've been forced to make some visits over the past few years. But things have worked out quite well, and it's wonderful to see all the new faces that I'm not familiar with, and looking at that wonderful poster display of the really very impressive work that some of the students, guided by the faculties here, are doing. I'm always pleased to see that. Good things are ahead for York. We're moving ahead with a number of physical assets that will continue to provide wonderful opportunities for all of you. I'm interested in a pharmacy school that's going to be an expensive one, but I mean, with the FDA here, it just seems to me there's the natural synergism. So we'll move methodically on that. I do know that there is great interest in a master's program in business, and I told the president that I'll be supportive of that. I just want to see certain things put in place, and we're moving along to get that done. I know you have a number of accreditation visits coming up soon, and I'm convinced that they will go well. You have a great team here, wonderful students. Admission standards continue to go up, retention and graduation rates moving in the right direction. You can't expect what is the term that biologists use? Not evolutionary. What happens when you take the big jump? Stephen Jay Gould used that. Punctuated equilibrium. I just love it. I have no idea what it means, but I think it means taking a big leap because of some events that happen. So you can't expect punctuated equilibrium to take the needle all the way. As long as the needle is moving methodically in the right direction, that's really the way to go. So let me stop at this point and throw the rest of the time that we have for questions, and don't be shy about any question that you really want answered, and I'll try my best to answer them intelligently. I can't promise that, but I'll try. And please identify yourself. So,
Chancellor, David Shagner, student, secondary student here at York. When's the earliest the School of Pharmacy will open?
I am reluctant to give you a date. The School of Pharmacy is something that I'm really committed to do. It's going to be very expensive, and it's going to be tricky, but we will get it done. We have to get our finances in more stable situation than they are right now. And as soon as that happens, we'll really get into the planning of it. This will be the next big effort that we're going to make. There's not going to be another school. Since I've been here, we've started a school of public health, a graduate school of journalism, the Macaulay Honors College, the whole decade of science is a big, big effort, probably the most expensive of all of the things that we've done, and a school of professional studies. So the next thing on the docket will be the pharmacy school, and I don't want to promise that by 2013 this is going to be fully operational, but it's something that I'm committed to do. And that's not a hedge. I just don't have, the appropriate answer to tell you. Yes?
Hi, I'm Laura Fishman. I'm chair of the Department of History and Philosophy, which also houses our interdisciplinary studies major and the Cultural Diversity Program. This is a general question. I'm curious to know your thoughts on the status of the humanities disciplines within the university, and also to comment on the state of humanities education in higher education throughout the United States and the implications this may have for future generations.
If I had a magic wand, I would ask that every student start their undergraduate work in the liberal arts and sciences. Unfortunately, when you look at the data and how students react to questions about why they want to go to college, most of the answers, unfortunately, and I think it is unfortunate, is that they want to get some skills to get the job, to go on and do something in their life. So we're seeing a real switch, movement away from studying the humanities, in particular the arts, into areas where one could present a credential and get a job. I think the humanities are so fundamental to just about everything that we do. And so I would love to see students studying philosophy, history, the languages. I mean, I think these are really just so fundamental for students to really get a better understanding of from where they came and how sort of all of these things interact. We're not seeing as much interest, unfortunately. I was talking with a colleague of mine yesterday, a woman who finished all of her, she reports directly to me. Both she and her husband were both English PhD students. He's a British literature, I think he's an 18th century scholar, and he went on, got a PhD. She stopped, although she was a brilliant student. And I asked her why she stopped, and she said there were no jobs. And I think that's a really sad event that has been going on now for some time. There are so few jobs in higher education today for people getting PhDs in art history or European history or Russian history. I mean, they just are not out there. Somebody getting a degree, a PhD in English, perhaps in some of the foreign languages where there are, needs, philosophy. It's just a sad statement of our values in these United States where we're not seeing it. I hope we will see a reformation about that in the future. And for the students that are here listening, I hope you do take more humanities courses because, first of all, they're subjects that will engage you in ways that you never envisaged before. When I was an undergraduate, every elective course that I could take was in English, philosophy, just getting away from the more technical subjects, and it was some of the most engaging time that I experienced as an undergraduate. And that's what I say to the students that are here: don't be afraid to dip your toes into waters that are not what you believe are not consistent with, putting together a resume that you believe will position you for a better job. Now is the time to really explore. Now is the time to be curious about things that you know nothing about. Let me tell you a very quick story, and then I'll end on this because this is a subject I have a real passion for. So I'm 14 years old, and I grew up in a very, very modest family, always having to work, whether it was shining shoes or delivering newspapers. This summer, I was known as a beach chair schlepper. I know what that meant was you went to Coney Island and you went to a concession to get a beach chair or an umbrella, and I was the guy that carried your chair from A to B over glass in the beach and cigarettes that was still burning, and I mean it wasn't. So some fellow, very well dressed. Now I knew nothing about universities. I mean, to me, going to college, I guess I'm going to go to college. I really knew nothing more than that. He said to me, you sound like a pretty smart fellow, because I was walking with him for a third of a mile to bring this beach chair down to a jetty. And I said, well, thank you, sir. And he said, are you planning to go to college? And I said, I guess so, sir. He said, well, let me give you a piece of advice. When you go to college, there's going to be a thing called liberal arts. Stay away from that. What you want to do is to be an engineer. Now, this was I'm trying to add up the thing very quickly, 1956. And he gave me $1 tip. Now, I had never gotten a $1 tip because it's usually 10 cents or a quarter. So I said, if he gave me a $1 tip, this must be some smart guy. So I go back, and at the end of the day, I meet with my friends, and I said, I met a very smart guy today, and he told me, and I'm going to tell you, that when we go to college, stay away from this thing called liberal arts. I don't know what it is, but it's not good. What we want to do is to become an engineer. That was very bad advice, which I did not take. But and I hope the students here take more liberal arts. It's a good thing to do. Long answer. I'm sorry. Yes.
Hi, my name is Shanae Harvin. I'm a journalism major. Being that we have the tuition hikes, I asked that can we have more teachers and more sections open so I can graduate on time? Because there were classes I was going to register for, and the sections would get ate up real quick, and it'll be one section open for only 20 students, and it's more than 20 students in your college. So will the tuition hikes benefit, will we have more teachers and more sections open?
The only way that I would propose tuition increases is if the money comes back for investment on the campuses. That has not been the way CUNY and SUNY operated in the past. We would charge tuition, and that money would be swept off of our balance sheets, and we would be left with charging the students more money, and they would see no benefit. The rational tuition policy that I have been promoting now for several years posits at its core that when dollars are generated from students, the students see the benefit. So yes, I mean, as a result of tuition increases, the monies, dollar for dollar, have to return to the administration for supporting the various activities that one needs to keep a college like York exciting. More faculty, more academic support people, and other investments that will enhance your experience as a student. Yes?
Janice Klein, PSC Chapter Chair, and in keeping with what you were just saying, we also know that as student tuition has increased, the state has decreased its support for CUNY students. And I'm affected by some statistics that I want to relate to some things that you said. You talked about tuition as an investment, but I want to say that it's also a tax, because what's been happening is the wealthiest New Yorkers have been having their tax rates lowered over the last 30 years, and our students have increasingly taken on the burden of tuition. Personally, I'd like to see higher education free, just as public less than higher education is. But 41% of our students don't get any financial aid, and I'm talking CUNY-wide, I'm not speaking at York. At York, it may be even higher. 41% work more than 20 hours a week. 33% of the CUNY students come from families that have incomes below the poverty level. And these students are being tremendously affected by the withdrawal of support from the state. Now, you said that we have to reimagine how we are supported. And I would like you to join the PSC in the fight, not just to reimagine, but also the fight to stop the changing values in the United States. Public education has been one of the most beautiful things in the United States, but now there seems to be a preference to give money to financial institutions and other things, stadiums, other things, while students make up for the burden. And of course, this affects our retention rates. It affects our graduation rates seriously. So what more is the administration willing to do? Yes, reimagine, but also...
Spoken just right out of the book. I could take issue with a lot of what you said, but I'm not going to burden you with that. Let me just say that the students that are not getting access to financial aid fall into two major categories. One, they are students that are not eligible for financial aid. Pell Grants, for example, they may not be eligible for, and TAP, they may not be eligible for. And students who exceed a certain income threshold, even though they are eligible because of where they were born and where they did their high school, would not be eligible either. The vast majority of students that are in financial distress because of the profile of their own, if they're living on their own or living with their families, are indeed getting access to financial aid. In fact, the most needy students, when you add up Pell and TAP, are getting over $10,000 a year. And that greatly exceeds the tuition increase. So let's get our data first correct. Secondly, if you ask me to change the world, that would be great. I mean, I'm not sure I'm the right one to change the world, but I'd like to participate in more than I can. We have been probably the most ardent advocates, and when I say we at CUNY have probably been the most ardent advocates for supporting public higher education. I came up with this idea of the CUNY Compact, which basically says you, the state of New York, cover our mandatory costs. Investment will be coming from a series of revenue streams. Part of those revenue streams will be associated with tuition, but there are a whole bunch of other revenue streams. We talk about the entrepreneurial university, which is generating now about $10 million a year to come in right into the operating budget. Philanthropy is now, this sounds like a big number perhaps to some of you. I don't think it's very impressive, but when we started down this road, we were raising, I don't know, something like $45 million a year. We're now raising over $200 million a year. It's not enough. That also is part of the CUNY Compact. Free tuition is not going to be on the table, so to me it's an empty exercise to talk about it. It is a fantasy that is long gone, and you could kick the dust and complain that you can't see. I prefer looking at things that are doable. Free tuition is just not going to happen again. And let me just remind you, you think we had free tuition. It wasn't free. When I went to CCNY, I had opportunities to go to a number of fancy schools, but I didn't have any money. So I went to CCNY. But there were more students at CCNY when I was there. There were more students at Brooklyn College and at Queens College and at Hunter College that were paying the same tuition as the students at NYU. What happened then in the old days where people would say that tuition was free was that there were a relatively small group of students that were fortunate enough to go during the day at a much smaller university, which was then City University. They did not pay tuition, but a large majority of the students were there in the late afternoon or early evening or late evening. They were paying a considerable amount of money to go. So when people say tuition was free, it was free for a relatively small group of students, not for the dominant number of students. To really understand this, you got to go back and understand the history, and I would hope that you might do that. Yes?
Hello, Chancellor. Good morning. My name is Navi. I'm one of the students here at York.
Yes.
My question is that, as you've been hearing in the news, federal government plans to cut the Pell Grants, and as you know, we recently had a hike in the tuition. What is your plan of action to take care of that issue that's going to be coming up in the fall semester?
Yeah, I thank you for that question. I'm concerned about Pell. Pell is running about a $34 billion deficit right now. In President Obama's budget, Pell eliminated for students studying in the summertime, and there is efforts on behalf of the Republican-controlled House of Representatives now to slash Pell even further. I have directed the start of an aggressive start. In fact, later this afternoon, we're going to put the pieces of this together, of an aggressive position, working with our consultants in Washington, working with our 2 senators and the congressional delegation, and to coordinate a campaign with the other major public university heads to really make some serious noise about Pell. I'm worried that with the deep deficits, huge deficits that the federal government is now experiencing, that Pell could be in some stress. and we can't allow that to happen. So I'm glad you asked the question. We have started a campaign, and you'll start seeing it over the next few weeks. It'll be posted on our CUNY website. There'll be newspaper announcements about this. There may be some television promos about this, but Pell is something that we have to ensure is stabilized so that the students who depend on this subvention of support have it as they go through their time at universities. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm a geology student, and I wanted to ask a question about, I see that we have an obvious decline of support. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. We have an obvious decline in financial support, and as you can see that in geology it's different from other sciences such as chemistry and biology. You could do in-lab work in chemistry and biology. However, in geology, you can't bring a mountain into the lab, or you can't bring a type of rock into a lab. We don't have that type of field trips where I see as older students or previous students, they had these opportunities, these great opportunities to go to these field trips and have a lot of exposure. However, recent students like me and my other fellow classmates, we don't have these opportunities to go to these field trips. Like, even when I graduate, I might go and have this opportunity to go for a job opportunity. And I might see a rock and I might not understand, or a type of mountain. I might not be able to stand. I could read it in my textbook and I could understand it in my textbook, but it's different from seeing it. So I was wondering how do you suggest we find fundings for these exposures?
You mean to get you in the field?
Yes.
Get you out of the school and get into the field. Well, look, this is no different than it's been for a long time. It's usually private money or support from mission agencies that are supporting faculty research and student research. The National Science Foundation has a very relatively rich portfolio of programs for students like yourself to experience field trips to do basic research and study. The best approach is to really work with your faculties here to identify the programs that exist. And I do know throughout the university, many of our students, I don't know if they're geology students, but many of our students are being supported as undergraduates to do things outside of their laboratories here, to experience encounters in their scientific training. And I would advise that you investigate a lot of these programs. Many of these programs, interestingly, are well funded, but not the participation is not as robust as one would imagine. So I think if you take some time and get some guidance from your faculty here, you would be surprised of the amount of opportunities that there exist, mainly in the science mission agencies at the federal government. Yes?
My name is Scott. I'm one of the, you can't hear me? Usually
Why don't you use the microphone?
My name is Scott. I'm one of the librarians here at York. And the CUNY-wide librarians have had a question, and I think Curtis is going to bring it up to you to find out the answer. So I thought since you're here, I'd ask you. We've heard about the new community college, that the chief librarian is going to be the head of IT, and that he's not going to be faculty. According to the contract, only faculty can observe faculty. Does that mean that the librarians at the new community college are going to be HEOs and not faculty?
You know, that's a question above my pay grade. I don't have a clue. I have no idea. But I have my chief of staff with me, who I'm sure is taking copious notes, and we'll get back to you on that. I just don't know the answer to it.
Cynthia Murphy, Continuing Education. It seems that President Obama's higher education assistance is going to the community colleges. Have we invited him to lunch so we can talk about the needs of the senior colleges?
I maybe 3 or 4 years ago, sat down with Mayor Bloomberg for breakfast. I'm trying to remember if he paid or I paid. He probably paid. I'm sure he paid. And I sat down with him a couple of weeks ago. We spent about 45 minutes together talking about community colleges. I got interested in community colleges around the time that I met with Michael Bloomberg. And he's been rather attentive to ideas that I shared with him. And for full disclosure, and I've said this many times before, I knew very little about community colleges. I never studied at a community college. I never taught at a community college. But I did know that there were structural issues connected with community colleges that I found very troubling. And first and foremost, graduation rates. And it wasn't just here, it was all over the United States. So we started to beat the drum about what I consider one of the more unforgotten, the forgotten asset class in higher education, and that is community colleges. I'll tell you a statistic that may astound some of you. It astounded me when I heard it for the first time. We do know about 45% of the students that study at a college in the United States study at a community college. So it has a much greater incidence rate than many people thought. But here's a statistic that I was floored by. In 2008, of the doctorates conferred by American universities, 20% of the doctorates that were conferred were to students who started at a community college. Now, I thought that there was something wrong with that statistic, but I checked it, and indeed it is correct. So I have really gotten to be quite interested in community colleges, in particular here, because CUNY, probably more than any other system, in part because of its compactness of its geography. I mean, all of the campuses are metaphorically in each other's backyard. And there is a lot of permeability that goes on between what we used to think of as these silos, these senior colleges and community colleges, and they're now, much more permeable. So I think we need to spend a lot of time thinking about community colleges. As we raise admissions criteria, and I've been leading that effort to really, and the reason I think that's important is that if you want to give the students the right kind of experience, you have to reduce variance in terms of their academic profile. It's impossible to really do the job that you really need to do if you have very wide tails, and the distribution that form those tails really is about academic performance prior to you coming to a university. So at the senior colleges, what I'm trying to do with the presidents, and President Keyes has done this well, and more has to be done here, is to reduce variance in terms of academic preparation. Once you do that, there's going to be more stress created on community colleges because more students will be going to a community college. And I think that's a good thing, provided that if their intention originally was to go to a senior college, it is our job to make sure that that path between a community college and a senior college is as smooth as we can possibly make it. And that's the reason that I've asked our Executive Vice Chancellor, Lexa Logue, to really take a very, very methodical approach working with each of our campuses on general education. That's going to be a big effort that's going to take a few years to get done. It's going to be it's going to change the topology of the City University of New York, and as long as there's no dilution in the academic quality that we experience, I want to see that happen. So when you say, have I spoken to the president? No. I called him the other day and he said, I'll get back to you. But I have not spoken to President Obama. I don't expect to speak to him, but we've spoken to the top people. I've spoken to Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, about community colleges. I think President Obama is correct in focusing on community colleges, that here is a large group of institutions that have really been ignored. I mean, ignored not in a design way. That just people, yeah, there are those community colleges, and that's good. We really have to understand community colleges better and understand that they represent a pathway to York College and other senior colleges. And I would imagine many of the students that study here at York may have started at a community college, and you, the faculty, when you get those students, I don't want you to be disadvantaged by you not being able to do what you think is the best for your students. And the way to do that is to make sure that the community college is aligned as best we possibly can with our four-year institutions. So I don't make any excuses for spending a lot of time thinking about community colleges. I think we have to think more about community colleges.
I'm completely in agreement with that. But you have a problem where the culture within public education at this time is to pass students, to show that the passing rates are higher, and graduating students, and not holding them actually accountable for their education, which explains why we have such a wide spectrum of student capability when they come into the community college and for second four-year college environment. So my question is, are you working with public education in any way to help make those public school students ready for college? Because at this point, I don't see that there's much of that.
A fundamental question. I don't think that there is a university anywhere that is more connected to the public schools than CUNY is. I mean, we are intimately related with what happens at the DOE schools in particular. When Joel Klein was Chancellor, Joel Klein and I probably spoke twice a week. And I lamented to him that too many of the students that are being, quote, credentialed, come to CUNY and they sputter and they don't succeed. About 74% of the DOE students that come to our community colleges need at least one subject remediated, whether it's writing, whether it's reading comprehension, or whether it's basic mathematical operations. That is a difficult thing for us to deal with. So we are deeply involved. I mean, we run schools. You have a school here, and a fabulous school. When Harold Levy was Chancellor and I had just started, he and I formed 4 new schools, one at York, one at Lehman, one at City College, and where's the other one? Baruch. No, not Baruch. Yeah, no, I know, Baruch has one, but there are 4 testing schools. And York is one of them. I should know, but we started.
But there's one here.
I know there's one here, and it's a great school. No, there's one at Kingsborough too, but there were 4, I think we started 4 testing schools. These are for students that are they take the same tests for Stuyvesant and Bronx Science, and there's just not enough room there, and so York gets some wonderful students. College Now, early college high schools. We just announced a new collaborative with IBM for a 9 through 14 school. Most importantly, we have agreed, Joel Klein and I and Kathy Black now has agreed, that we will open the hoods of both of our institutions and look deeply into what happens at the schools and track what happens at the schools to what happens at CUNY. So we are really working very, very closely, and your question probably is jogged by, you know, the recent revelations that test scores were gamed, and gamed because cut points were reduced, and therefore more students were gotten through, where the rigor of that experience was really not there. What we have, and here's a serious problem that we're facing, a tale of two tales. A tale, T-A-L-E, of two T-A-I-L-S. Goes back to the question that I think you asked about, I said about the distribution. What we're seeing at CUNY now is the tails of that distribution getting more mass. We're getting more and more highly qualified students coming to CUNY, more so than we've had in decades. Huge numbers of students with impressive SAT scores and very good GPAs. They're ready to do good work at just about any institution in the United States. But at the same time, we're getting a heavy tail of students that are seriously challenged with respect to just the acquisition of basic knowledge and skills. That is a real problem, because once you increase variance, and when you have heavy tails, for those of you who remember the normal distribution, and I see some heads bobbing, that's a good thing, you have big variance. Big variance is big problems, because what you have to have if you have big variance is a lot of money, which we don't have, and really smart management, which we hopefully are at a point of managing that kind of problem. So, and I'm very concerned about that. I want to make sure that we get the most able students coming to CUNY, but I also know that we have an obligation to take students that have very serious academic profiles, that if you were to project their likelihood of success, it would be very, very small. So, and that's the reason that we work so diligently with the schools, because we cannot assume the responsibility of remediating all of these students. It costs us $30 million a year to redo subjects that students should have mastered before they came to CUNY. Can you imagine if we had that $30 million and I could deploy that $30 million elsewhere? That would be a very good thing. So I worry about the problems of dilution in the schools before they come to CUNY. And something is going to have to be done very dramatically. And I think David Steiner and Merrill Tisch really understand that this is a problem that has to be met head on. I know that Michael Bloomberg is deeply concerned about it, and I'm deeply concerned about it as well. And we have a lot of work to do to try to turn that around. Yeah, because I have to be, yes, I'll take 2 questions, okay, just to.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I'm a student here at York. I'm also an employee of UAPC. I see how many students apply to CUNY, and I see hands-on, how well students do coming in and how poorly. Basically, from my understanding is you want to decrease the amount of acceptance into CUNY, because in reality, you're saying that there's a lot of students who are, excel at every level, and then there are students who do poorly, basically increasing tuition as well. You had made a comment about increasing tuition basically as a investment into more needy students, so they would be able to attend university as well. That was from my understanding. But if you increase tuition, wouldn't that at the same time lessen the amount of applicants? Because I work to go to school, so if tuition were to be increased, that would be me out of college. I don't know, and you have programs like SEEK as well, from my understanding, for students from low-income homes with poor grades as well. So would they still be able to apply to university? Would they have, basically, would they be held higher on a list than I would because I don't qualify for that program?
Let me be very clear so that I don't leave with an impression that is not very direct to what you're saying. We must have more tuition at CUNY. And we must do it over a sustained period. Small incremental changes in tuition. As long as the tuition assistance program moves in an index way with tuition, I don't worry about that because I care about the students that are placed in harm's way. What I do worry about are the students that have access to financial aid. And there are a non-insignificant number of students because they don't qualify. The tuition assistance program has certain qualifications, and Pell has certain qualifications. The only way that I can see getting the investment and also helping those students is by raising private money. And the vast majority of the money that we are raising today through philanthropy is to help students. By far, if you look at all of the gifts, and we're pushing the presidents to raise more and more money, the vast majority of that money is going to support students in need. And I think that's a good thing to do. But if you don't have the investment in tuition, none of you, the students, are going to get the kind of experience that you need to get. I'm just sorry, the money is not there. We need you to have more faculty, more full-time faculty, more advisors, more instrumentation, better equipped laboratories, because if you don't have those things in place, the core of what we do at a university is going to be seriously compromised, and the ones who are going to suffer as a result of that are the students. One of the things that I'm focused upon is a valued degree. When you leave your college with a BA or a BS, I want the marketplace to say, oh, this is a student that graduated your college. I want to meet that student. As opposed to, here's a student that graduated your college. Well, I don't think they really got much of an experience. Let's go on to somebody else. That's why I say the investment, while it might be a little difficult now, It is by far the best investment that you can make in your future. Getting the kind of education that you need to provide you with the competitiveness in an economy that is going to be unforgiving. Travel around the world. You will see huge numbers of people that have credentials that are dying for your job. And they're going to get your job because companies are going to say, hey, who do I hire? Do I hire the person that I know is well-trained, or do I hire the person who I think is not as well-trained? Well, you know, if you're a business person, you're going to hire the former. And what I am trying to do is to give the students the experience that they need, and that can only happen with investment. And it's not going to happen at the level that we want it to happen at the states level. There is a serious regression, and it's been going on for some time. This just did not happen last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. There has been a regression away from support of public higher education. And that's, you know, one of the reasons that 3 years ago, we assembled top people in higher education. Why last November we did the same thing to really start creating awareness of this problem. I'll take one more question and then I really have to go. Whoever, one more and then I'm gone. Where? Okay.
Last question. That's it. That's the last question.
Thank you. I'm Will Valley. I'm a nursing major, journalism minor here at York. I kind of have a twofold question, if that's okay.
Make it one. Make it one.
Okay.
I have a question, but it has 9 parts.
Okay. Some are of the opinion that you know, especially with economic times being what they are, it's not the most prudent thing to the construction of the new community college and the hiring of staff. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well, let me answer it. We need more seats at our community colleges. Many of them are bursting at the seams, and we're going to do it. The community college is established. We will have actually a board action on Monday. We've hired a new president, Scott Ivenbeck, who is a terrific guy. We're hiring a bunch of faculty, designing curriculum. It's the right thing to do. A university is an organic entity. It should shed things that it shouldn't do anymore, and it should acquire things that it should do. And one of the things that we should do is to give more opportunities for students at our community colleges. Okay? Did that answer you? Thank you very much.